and welcome back to another episode of the Water Guy Show. It's Paul, your water guy, and...
This is Ethan, your sound guy.
Fantastic, and we are veterans of this now. We've been doing this. This is our 25th episode.
25th anniversary.
So
episode-wise.
More than an entire day of episodes if you were to try to binge it.
That's true.
That's kind of crazy.
It would officially take you more than one day.
As of right now, it would take you one day, and by the time you're finishing listening to this one, you will be an hour into the next day, and probably pretty tired. So this is the one, you already know the intro, but I'll do a quick intro of this. We talk about weird stuff related to water, all different aspects of it, because to have this many episodes, we had to get creative and find things that are not necessarily the first thing you would think of with water. So the podcast, if you probably noticed today, we have changed the name a little bit. So it was Water Guy Podcast, radio, and now it is Water Guy Unfiltered.
I like it.
Yeah, I felt that was... and that begs the question, why did we change that? So I wanted to just throw a little history out there to those of you that are just now tuning in. We first started this podcast on a radio show here in Richmond, and it was more designed to kind of create some community engagement and give folks some information that they could use to go ahead and make decisions on making better water for themselves. So it was on a radio show, and let's just say that it was pretty tame in terms of language here. You couldn't mess up and say something naughty, but this is one of those where I'm unfiltered now. So just warning, there may occasionally be foul language, but usually we don't use that because it's not really part of our clean water, the way we talk with our normal customers. But every once in a while, we just get wild and crazy with it.
Podcast is rated PG now.
It is?
Parental guidance is recommended.
Oh, well, we've moved up from G.
Yeah.
That's pretty bad. So you're probably wondering, what the heck are we going to talk about today? I got a cool picture of a core chunk taken out of the earth that goes pretty doggone deep.
It's like a very, very layered column.
Yes,
nice.
A very layered column with grass on top and stuff down at the very bottom that looks like lava.
Sediment and such.
So this is an interesting one because it's called. We're gonna call this episode "Fracking Unmasked."
Fracking.
So this is a mysterious thing that's out there. We run into fracking all the time with what we call low yield wells around us. Mm-hmm. And it's the same exact concept that they use, just with hopefully different chemicals.
Right.
But they're all basically the same. So for those of you that have never heard of fracking, which would shock me, the big question is, what is it? So fracking, it's really hydraulic fracturing. That's what it stands for. And the history on fracking goes all the way back to 1947. That was when it was first used. So it's been around for like almost 80 years at this point. So what they end up doing is they have found this process for a bunch of different things that they get out of the ground: oil, gas, geothermal energy, and water. We've actually seen it in water wells here, like I said. But most of the stuff that we're going to talk about here today is really centered around the oil and the gas fracking. Because that's the stuff that, at first I was like, well, that doesn't have a damn thing to do with drinking water. And by the time I got done with this episode, I was terrified. So, yeah, it gets kind of freaky. Yeah. What is it? I mean, how does it work? It's the process of injecting liquid into liquid and materials at high pressure to create small fractures within tight shale formations to stimulate the production and safely extract energy from an underground well after the drilling has ended.
Okay.
So pretty much they drill a well, they suck out what they can naturally, and then they pull their stuff out of there and they put in equipment and they actually hydraulically fracture it. And what this ends up doing is it gives them the ability to pull out a whole bunch more stuff out of the same well than they ever had the potential for before. And it's actually pretty damn impressive what they have accomplished with this. So there are currently, one of the numbers that I pulled out was 1.7 million wells just in the U.S. That's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
That use fracking. So I had no idea it was that big. But the fracking has resulted in an additional 7 billion barrels of oil and 600 trillion cubic feet of natural gas that they would not have had if they didn't use that technology. So, you can say, wow, that's pretty amazing, what they call horizontal drilling and that kind of extraction. It maximizes what they're pulling out of the ground. So, hopefully you're messing up the ground less than drilling a whole bunch more wells to try to suck the same stuff out of there. So, there's that. So we get a whole bunch of production out of this, and really it sounds just wonderful. But the stuff that they inject down into the wells, that's kind of a big mystery. We'll talk about that in more detail later. But it's one of those things that there's been some concerns worldwide about shoving stuff down into the earth. You don't know what you're putting in the earth. You don't know where it's going to end up eventually.
Right.
So there's been a lot of places outside the U.S. that have actually banned fracking. France, Ireland, Bulgaria, and there's other places that have got at least restrictions in place. Mm-hmm. And then actually Britain's new prime minister said he is going to continue a national moratorium on fracking for natural gas. Mm. So even Britain is a little concerned about the impact of this stuff. So that's it's one of those things. It's worldwide, and some people are not 100% comfortable with it. So it's been extremely productive for the United States. Between the, let's see here, up until about 2016, which isn't that long ago, the previous 10 years, the fracking technology that we've used here in the U.S. has basically brought us from what they called energy scarcity to now being the undisputed leader of oil and gas production worldwide. So that's according to International Energy Agency executive. He said that. His name was Fatih Birol. Sounds pretty official.
Yeah.
So basically, the U.S. oil production due to fracking has increased by 75%, and natural gas production has increased by 39%. So it's become significant in the amount of stuff that they're pulling out of the ground right now. 2/3 of the total marketed natural gas production right now comes from fracking, and about half of our oil production. So half, that's significant.
Right.
So anyway, it's a good thing, because the reality is we're going to have a real hard time just transitioning from petroleum-based vehicles and power and stuff like that on over to sun and wind here instantaneously. So we got to have a long-term runway to be able to make that switch over happen eventually. And they're getting better with it. But basically, the fracking that we've done over here in the U.S. and Canada has given us energy security, they're estimating, for the next 100 years. So this is a good long-term thing. You're probably wondering, all right, well, with everything that comes out, there's some good and then there's some bad. So the risks, we kind of like let the cat out of the bag. One of the big risks that they have is everybody's worried about contaminating drinking water. So you're basically drilling a hole in the ground. You're punching a bunch of who knows what liquid it is, injecting it down into this hole, and you're causing these. Basically, you're filling up and causing things to kind of spread apart, which helps this thing to, I guess, you could think of it like it helps lubricate stuff to come on out. Not entirely accurate, but it gives you like a visual of what happens down in there. So when you're doing that, you always have the risk because you got to go down typically deeper than most of the aquifers in order to hit a lot of these deposits and things that you're targeting. So there's always the chance you're gonna penetrate and foul a drinking water source or an aquifer. And then, of course, the other big concern is that the stuff you're shooting down in there, it's going to go somewhere eventually. So the migration of all of these chemicals and funky stuff, that's pretty scary. Little fact that I dug up in here is that even though natural gas and drinking water have no geological barriers, they're typically found at different depths, but there's no geological barriers. So there's really nothing separating them. It's not like there's a bedrock layer that seals them off from each other. So it is very, it's not uncommon to go ahead and contaminate drinking water from going after natural gas, apparently. And I'm not a gas person here, so if anybody wants to shoot me over a correction on that, I'm just trying to state concepts here and make it as simple as I possibly can for most folks listening and a little bit entertaining. So we talk about contaminating the drinking water. It can also contaminate the air, which I didn't even think of. How in the world is drilling a well going to contaminate the air?
Right.
Well, it releases methane and VOCs during this whole process. So the VOCs are those volatile organic compounds. Basically, a lot of the liquids that they use during this whole injection process kind of come back up eventually. Sometimes quick, but sometimes it can take a while. And there's this stuff called flowback. Not like Brokeback Mountain, but flowback, which is a whole different thing. So flowback is when injected water returns to the surface. It's basically a nasty mix of radioactive materials like uranium, and those are naturally occurring down in the earth, obviously. But it also includes the chemicals from the injection, heavy metals that are kind of a mix of maybe something that they put down with it,
right,
or deposits down in the earth that could be coming back up naturally. But this stuff, you're putting it in under pressure, so eventually it ends up trying to push back on you and causes this stuff called flowback.
Okay.
So the big thing is, what the heck do you do with this flowback, and is it significant? Well, they did this a list of materials that's in the chemicals used for the injection. And between 2005 and 2013, they identified 1,084 different chemicals that are used in that injection process.
Wow.
Yeah, that's a lot of freaking chemicals.
It is a lot of freaking chemicals.
Yeah, and some of them are PFAS, which we talked about a whole bunch in previous episodes.
Right.
That's the forever chemical. Once you put it in there, it's pretty much there forever.
Mm-hmm.
That's why they call it the forever chemical. So this flowback is some nasty stuff. It's almost as scary as the leach-it, the landfill juice.
Landfill juice?
Yeah, but
yeah.
I don't even... this may actually be worse, because this stuff comes back out of the ground, and it is so nasty that you can't do anything with it. Yeah, I just figured a little bit may ooze back out of there. No.
Right.
This is so foul that it literally you have to like dispose of it in special ways. One of the ways that they're playing with now is to basically recycle this water and kind of process it, but that's not a good answer because it's better than some of the other options, but it produces this thing called T-norm, T-E-N-O-R-M.
T-norm.
Yeah, T-norm. The actual definition of T-norm is technologically enhanced, naturally occurring radioactive material. So basically, this stuff that comes out of the ground, a lot of it, like I said, is radioactive. And now you've mixed it with all sorts of horrific things. Yeah, it is very difficult to turn that into something usable.
Yeah.
So don't be drinking some T-norm. That's nasty stuff. And we're talking about significant amounts. They use water as a big component of the stuff that they're fracking with.
All right.
Because it makes sense, right? Well, each well that they frack with uses, on average, between 1.5 and 9.7 million gallons of water. That's insane when you really think about the quantity of water.
Yeah.
And all of that water, once it goes down in there, it becomes so heavily contaminated you can't do anything with it. Otherwise, you get your T-norm. So the big question is, what do they do with it? Well, historically, they have taken this flow back, and they'll either store it in a pit, like a big pond, and basically wait for it to dry, and then scoop it up and do something with it. Well, these pits are usually not lined pits. It just goes in there, and this stuff evaporates, which that creates contaminated air. So
Right.
I think I mentioned that earlier, but the contamination also happens to the air because of the methane and the VOCs, and it's coming from the pits. Basically, this stuff is evaporating, and if you've ever been around an open can of paint, for example, you smell that stuff.
Yeah.
So that's the exact same thing. You're getting this stuff going up into the atmosphere, that's a whole nother problem. But yeah, you can put it in a pit and let it dry out. But you're gonna love this. Take a guess what they do with most of it.
Oh dear.
There's dead silence right here because he's thinking of the worst thing possible.
I am. Why don't you go ahead and tell me?
You're
what they
gonna
do with
love
it.
this. So this is where the picture comes in. So this big old core section with all the layers,
Right.
they're sucking and fracking up at the top. And then they get all this funky, nasty flow back that they have to do something with. So I was just blown away when I heard this. They basically drill another well, a deep well, and they pump all this stuff down deeper into the ground. I know, it's crazy.
They just shove it further into the ground.
Yeah, just put it down in the dirt. Nobody will ever, not in the dirt,
You know
literally.
what that reminds me of? Remember, there was
Camp Lejeune.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a good point. There was also a time in like the 60s and 70s where they recommended the best way to dispose of motor oil was to dig a hole in the ground, pour the motor
What?
oil down there, and then like throw rocks and stuff on it.
Oh my gosh, I never even heard of that one.
Yeah.
I'm going to have to do some digging. Yeah, I can't even imagine throwing motor oil in a hole in the ground.
Neither can I.
We used to, poop in a outhouse, which was a hole in the ground, but that's nowhere near as horrific as this.
Yeah.
But they would take this flow back and pump it into deep wells.
Oh my
Yeah.
God.
So that's this opens up Pandora's box of
Of course.
what's the worst that can happen when you take all this toxic stuff and shove it down deep in the earth? You think it's just going to stay there and miracle itself away? No. It's eventually going to end up getting into water supplies and whatnot.
I was about to say, can't that like leak into like aquifers and stuff like that?
Oh yeah, absolutely. That's exactly the concern about it, and that's why a lot of countries have actually banned fracking, because they're like, wait a minute, you're going to take all this radioactive T-norm and you're going to start just injecting it down a hole in the ground? That never almost works out in anybody's favor. Now, if you're, tapped into a layer of hot magma lava, you might be able to go ahead and,
Right.
because that stuff pretty much just liquefies and eats anything in its path. But they're not going down to because that's like stupid deep. But when you start shoving that stuff down deep, other things happen. So it's just it's just bad. Yeah, like I said, we were doing the research on this, and by the time it got done, I was like, oh my gosh, I had no idea that this was as dicey as it really is. So you got these deep wells. So we're up talking about that part now. The deep wells have all sorts of issues with migrating into possible water supplies and other things like that. But anyway, yeah, that's just
wow.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
It's time to tell you about the thing that at first I was like, there's no way that's right. So
go ahead and hit me with it.
Yeah. So when you're down that deep, you've got basically like plates, tectonic plates, right down deep. They're down there sticking it in that stuff. Yeah, it's down pretty deep. And these plates, when I saw like a diagram of them, it looks like two pieces of what's that? Not a loofah, but kind of like a sponge. It looks kind of like one of those rocks that have a whole bunch of holes in it.
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, I can't think of the name of it.
Very porous looking.
Yeah. Pumice stone.
Oh,
that's kind of what it looks like.
Okay, yeah.
So if you could imagine down there, the whole place isn't like one complete solid layer. It's little layers that are all kind of smashed together, and they're for the most part basically dry, right? And they're under pressure from up above. So what they end up doing is they end up pushing themselves under pressure together, and this smashing effect, dry on dry, gives it a lot of, I guess, friction, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
So that when you have seismic activity from underground, they kind of hold themselves together, and it adds stability. But if you start fracking, what they've ended up doing is they've actually injected kind of like lubricant, and they have filled up all these little pores, so that instead of these things sticking together so that they don't move, now they're just kind of slippery. So they can start to move.
They gave Earth an oil change?
They gave Earth an oil change.
Oh,
exactly.
No.
Well, so yeah, it gets like, this is, I told you you're gonna get deep. So we're deep in the Earth at this point. So if they can no longer hold their stability, bad things happen.
Right.
Things called tremors. Not like the movie Tremors, which I like that movie, but it was horrible. So tremors. You know what a tremor is?
I don't, actually.
Do you know what an earthquake is?
I do.
Okay. So they're related.
Okay.
I didn't know all this. I had to go deep to all you geologists that are listening. Both of you. You're probably like yelling right now, like, oh, I know exactly what that is. I had to look this up because I was not familiar with the difference between tremors and earthquakes. So basically, they're the same thing. A tremor is a small earthquake.
Okay.
So there's this thing called the Richter scale that we've all heard of, right?
Yeah.
You know, you got an earthquake and it's a 7 on the Richter scale or whatever. I don't even know what the right number would be. But I do know that the Richter scale is different than this other scale called the moment magnitude scale.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what they typically use for, they're kind of getting away from that whole Richter thing and more into this moment magnitude scale, because the Richter scale is logarithmic.
Okay.
So the more the shit is shaking, the higher the number is going to be, right?
Right.
0 is you don't have any shaking. So a logarithmic scale, and we use this in pH because pH is also logarithmic. So if you can imagine, the further you get away from your neutral point, which would be 0, like a 1 is 10 times more than 0. But a 2 is 100 times more than 0. And a 3 is a 1,000 times, yes. It just keeps adding zeros to it.
Right.
So a 3 is 1,000 times. But the moment magnitude scale is what we call linear. So a 1 is, a 1's a 1, and a 2 is twice as much as 1. And a 3 is 3 times as much as 1. So it's not, instead of 3,000, now it's 3.
It's the 3. Yeah.
Right. So the numbers aren't exactly, the same. You can't like jump from one scale to the other one.
It's hard to convert it.
Yes.
Yeah.
But let's just say that a tremor is up until you get to a number 5. Then after you get above a 5, now you're officially an earthquake.
Gotcha.
It's a little geological nerding out for a second.
Learning a lot of stuff on the podcast today.
All sorts of things.
Like it.
Yeah, and logarithmic stuff and things like that.
Yeah.
We like to nerd out every once in a while.
I'm here for it.
So basically, the whole reason we talk about tremors and earthquakes is because that's what these things, this fracking is actually causing. And it may not be the fracking itself, because the fracking is not as deep as these deep wells that they're depositing all of this flow back into. That's really where the problem is.
Right.
So they're basically shoving all this liquid down in there with these plates, lubricating them, and then the plates want to move easier. So bad stuff. So yes, fracking can cause earthquakes. Yeah, if that's not scary, I don't know what is. But anyway, let's see here. There's other bad things. Not nearly. They pale in comparison. Like they were complaining in North Dakota about how much they have to spend for the road maintenance because of all the additional trucks and everything that go in, which I was a little surprised. It says drilling and fracking a single well can require more than 1,000 truck trips. That's a lot of trucks.
It is a lot of trucks.
So this particular place that we were digging up information on said that North Dakota, over the next 20 years, has to spend $7 billion just because of the fracking industry up there, just to maintain the roads.
Wow.
That's a lot of coin.
It is a lot of money.
So they also talked about it's led to increased traffic accidents and traffic fatality rates, and hospitals are suffering with a debt crisis because for some reason the people that always get in the accidents up there, most of them or a lot of them don't have health insurance or permanent addresses. Yeah, that sounds like a whole nother problem. But anyway, wasn't even gonna mention that, but it seemed kind of pertinent right now.
Yeah, absolutely.
But let's see, over in Blackpool. So remember, Britain has a moratorium on these right now. Well, they weren't always like that. But over in this place called Blackpool, which I guess is by the coast, I had to look it up, they noted over 120 tremors during drilling at a quadrilla site, which is, I guess, one of their oil people or gas people. And one of these tremors lasted almost 100 hours. So 4 days.
Wow.
Yeah. Can you imagine? Ground just shaking for more than half a week.
I'd be scrambled.
I'd be a little worried. I'd be like, oh, maybe we need to move. But that was actually from the BBC.com, the news place over there, not the other BBC. We're going to stop that. So back home here, Kansas, there's a fracking site, and these scientists installed seismometers around this site, and they measured vibrations for 8 months. And they found that tremors near the injection site only happen during fracking. So they made it a definite correlation between the fracking process and the tremors.
Some scientific
evidence. So there's no coincidence there.
Yeah.
So it definitely causes some funky stuff. let's see here. We talked about releasing the dangerous petroleum hydrocarbons, benzene, toluene, xylene. We talked the VOCs. Releases ground level ozone, which is a risk factor for asthma and other respiratory illnesses. This was from the Colorado School of Public Health, so that's my main source on that particular air pollution part of it. Some of the big stuff is just the lead, arsenic, and radioactive stuff that's brought back to the surface, mixed with all those 1,000+ chemicals,
Right.
that they don't know what to do with, so they just stick it right back in a deeper hole. But just crazy. They're talking about fracking impacting climate change because, the proponents of fracking, they're saying, oh, hey, it produces more clean burning stuff than doing coal.
Right.
But it's kind of interesting when you look at it. Fracking itself often releases large amounts of methane. That is a highly potent greenhouse gas.
Yes, it is.
Traps heat at least 87 times more effectively than carbon dioxide over a 20-year period.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's much worse than CO2. And they say that the methane leakage rates, basically the stuff that gets leaked out of these things from shale gas wells in particular, can be as high as 9%. And anything more than 3% means it's basically worse for the climate than burning coal. So there's a lot of argument that fracking is actually bad for the climate.
Yeah.
So, I think we need a break.
Yeah.
I've just been rambling here for who knows how long.
Yeah.
Long time. You'll hear a little word from our sponsors if we have any, and we'll be right back. And I am your sponsor. I just wanted to let everybody ponder this little fact. When you go to a restaurant and they offer you water, do you really know what they're offering you in that glass? Because it's most likely the exact same water that is used to flush the toilet. You deserve better water than what's going in your toilet. Demand better. Demand table water that's been purified. Reach out to 877-60-WATER for more information on how you can get your local restaurant involved. We will travel anywhere. All right, welcome back. Hopefully the sponsors were very nice. It got you all pumped up to buy some stuff.
Those were very nice sponsors.
They're my favorite sponsors.
Yeah, they're very kind.
We jumped in so fast we didn't even talk about anything recent.
Yeah. How are you, Paul?
I'm tired, actually.
Yeah.
I spent this last weekend. I almost feel bad about this, but I got to tell the story. So, yeah, my brother-in-law down in Stanford, North Carolina, he bought this house and they're kind of redoing it to make it, the perfect final house. And there was this part of the plan is a deck and a pool, but unfortunately there's this oak tree that was right in the middle of all of this.
Dadgum oak trees, man.
Darn oak tree. So he calls me up, and he calls me up because I'm a resource for just about everything, it seems, except for things that he's an expert in. But he calls me up and he's like, yeah, I got this guy that wants to charge me $1,200 to get this tree down and just cut it. And that was it. And I had been down there one time before, but I remembered this tree, and he sent me like a picture of it to remind me. And I was like, I'll have that thing on the ground in 10 minutes. And a little backstory here. It's not just me being, overly zealous on jumping into something I have no idea about. I actually, after I got out of NC State with a mechanical engineering degree in '94, the job market sucked. Just sucked. If you didn't have experience, you didn't get a job. It was just that simple. So I didn't have a choice. I was also a wrestler in college. So I was physically fit and I was an unemployed engineer. It's a weird combination. So I did what anybody would do, and I grabbed any friggin' job I could to go ahead and pay bills while I was trying to send out, applications.
Of course.
So I started managing a pet shop for a buddy of mine who actually owned the pet shop. It was one of those little family places before all the PetSmarts and the major ones just dominated the market.
Big pet store came in.
Oh yeah, we hated that because that was back when they, Petco, PetSmart, whatever they were back then. They expanded in, but anyway, so I was working like 73 hours a week because I didn't have a life at that point, a life or a wife. And this guy came in, and it's kind of funny because he was like, yeah, I need some help taking down a tree this weekend. And he's like, you look strong. And I'm like, and I'm from Iowa, right?
All right.
We don't have a lot of trees to begin with. And I didn't even know there was such a business as a tree service.
Mm-hmm.
But it became apparent that there must be people willing to have their trees taken down. So I didn't have any time anyway, but I took like one day off and I helped him take this tree down. And it was kind of funny because every time you run into one of these tree guys that doesn't really have a real business, he's just kind of like operating out of his station wagon. They're all like Navy SEALs according to them. But that's, we just swapped war stories of, hand-to-hand type stuff.
Yeah.
And I didn't believe anything he told me because it didn't make sense. But he did know how to take down a tree.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how he learned that knowledge, but he was a horrible businessman. So as my rejection letters kept coming back in, I kept helping him on the weekends. And eventually I was like, this pays way better than managing a pet shop.
Right.
Because I was working, like I said, it was like 72, 73 hours a week. It was just stupid.
Jeez.
And I made $400 a week. Yes. It was insulting is what it was.
Yeah, of course.
But every decision gets you to where you are right now. So I ended up helping this guy, and then he kind of flaked out on me, and I was like, you know what? I can do this. So I started a tree service, and I had built it up. We did residential logging and tree service, and for 6 years, I built this thing from zero. And so that was like the backstory. I've literally taken down thousands of trees. We didn't have a bucket truck or anything like that. It was all climbing, which is the toughest way to do them.
Of course.
Especially when they're dead and the widowmakers, that kind of stuff. So that's why he called me about this tree, and that's why I was able to say, yeah, that's a 10-minute tree. So I still have all of my gear. Now, some of these saws they're all professional grade, but some of these saws literally hadn't been started since 2000, end of 2000. So we're talking 24 years.
20, almost a 25-year-old saw.
25 years since it has run. And I started the tree service in 95. So some of these were my original saws.
Oh my God.
Now, for those of you listening, steel. That's the only way to go.
Oh, of course.
Yeah, I had some guys that, along the way, they try to find their way on the team, and they're like, oh, you need to get some Husqvarna. Well, I tried like 2 or 3 Husqvarnas. They didn't make it a month. So I've got steels that are like literally going on 30 years old right now.
Yep.
And one of them is a beast. It's got this depressurization button on it so that you can actually start it without dislocating your arm. And it probably weighs like 28, 30 pounds, something like that. So I'm down there. I bring all that stuff down there. Ropes, all my throw gear, because we got these special bean bags with special string, and you can get pretty accurate just hand throwing it. But we had this special slingshot that you would shoot the bean bag up into the tree, and then you'd use the little line to pull up the good line, and it saved you an immense amount of time. Well, basically my friggin' bag got stuck in a like a fork of a branch. It spun around and wrapped, and I'm like, damn it, now I'm gonna have to climb. Well, I haven't had spikes on in a long time either. So I got these huge gouges on my legs from just the brief 45 minutes that I was in the tree setting the line. And then had the whole thing all rigged up, and long story short, he has a Kubota tractor, and I just used that just more as an anchor point because nobody else down there I trusted to be able to give me just enough oomph if I needed it to get this thing to go where I wanted. Because I was like 90% sure it was going to go without it, but that 10%, it's been a few decades. I could get bitten. So so I ended up taking that thing down, and that was 2 days of running a saw is at least 95 degrees. So yeah, it was like boot camp, but man, I tell you what, I am so jacked up right now.
Yeah.
Went to the gym on Tuesday, and I'm thinking this is going to be a terrible workout because I have that trainer. And I told him, I was like, I've been through boot camp over the weekend. It was 95 degrees. I probably drank 5 gallons of water, and I'm still dehydrated. And I had a beast of a workout.
Oh yeah.
And today I was in there for round 2, and I had an even better workout. So maybe I need to be beaten on more. But all that long story about how are you today? I'm still a little tired.
Yeah.
But I feel like I'm growing. Yeah, so now everybody knows a little bit more about me and my tree background.
Your escapades.
Oh, and that was an important story because I told you I felt bad about this at some point. I think maybe I did. So, as most people know, every year, every season that a tree is alive, there's a ring, right?
Right.
So I had the tree down, and we started, somebody asked a question, how old do you think this tree is? And I'm looking at it, I'm going, I don't know, 80, 100 years old, something like that. Well, we started counting the rings, 185 years old.
Wow.
I felt like the biggest piece of shit for cutting down a 185-year-old perfectly healthy tree. And actually everybody did. It was sobering to realize that this thing was like 25 years old when the Civil War happened.
Yeah.
I mean, we're all thinking to ourselves, did we really have to do that? Maybe we could have moved the house. So no, we cut down a tree, and I was like, you got to honor this tree. So
yeah, of course.
it all the top end got chopped, basically cut into firewood and chipped and recycled, and we did save 1.5 sections of the main trunk because it's gorgeous, and he's actually going to have a portable sawmill guy come in and cut it into something, and we're going to turn it into something that's going to live, in somebody's house.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so we're trying to give it a little bit of immortality there.
Yeah.
Mainly because we feel terrible about killing a tree that was 185 years old.
Right, that's insane.
Even me, the tree master, I was just like, ooh, that kind of hurts. So, yeah, so now I'm super healthy, and that segues into the final part. We're going to dig deep into some of the health impacts from this fracking stuff. So you're probably wondering, it sounds bad, but does it actually hurt you? Well, it can. It can actually do some pretty significant bad stuff, especially if you are a young child.
Oh no.
Yeah. And I don't remember if I said this or not already, but there's like that 1.7 million wells in the U.S. I know I said that part, but I don't know if I said that within a half a mile radius, if you look at all the people that are within that pretty small area, there's over 12 million people in the U.S. that are within a half mile of one of these wells. So they're exposed daily. And it's kind of like when we go to somebody's house and we show them that they really should be taking their health a little bit more seriously and investing in a drinking water system. A lot of these good old boys will be like, oh, I've been drinking this water. It tastes great. It's not about the one-time poisoning. It's about lifetime or long-term exposure. Mm-hmm. So that's really where the scary stuff happens. Because imagine, every day these wells are letting off methane and VOCs and all this other crazy stuff. So I have a whole page here of different papers and stuff like that. We're not going to cover all of this stuff, but let's just say a 2022 paper in Environmental Health Perspectives was talking about Pennsylvania children who lived near a fracked oil or gas well during their early years or whose mothers lived there pre-conception had approximately 2 to 3 times the odds of developing childhood acute lymphoblastic leukemia. Yeah, childhood leukemia.
Wow.
Serious. Some bad stuff.
Yeah.
Compared with children that lived farther from the well. So, yeah, that may not be a 100% scientific study if they really wanted to try to tear it apart, but 2 to 3 times, that's pretty damning.
Yeah.
So there was another one in the Journal of Health Economics in 2022 found that shale gas wells are associated with increased preterm births and low birth weight. Yeah. Basically, they said drilling near an infant public water source yields poorer birth outcomes and more fracking-related contaminants in the public drinking water. So now you know why this is all on the Water Guy show.
Right.
Kind of scary. New wells, new fracking wells within 1 kilometer of a public drinking water source were associated with an 11 to 13% increase in preterm births and low birth weight. So it was significant. Another one in 2022. These are all pretty doggone recent, within the last 2 years. In Nature Energy, found that people aged 65 and older living near or downwind of fracking operations are at higher risk of early death. They didn't give any more specifics on that, but if you're 65 or older and you're downwind, you're going to die sooner. That's what that means.
Wow.
Let's see. I think that we have asthma exacerbations, new cases of childhood asthma, excess deaths, and $77 billion in total health impacts. That's here in the U.S., but they're talking about downwind states like Illinois, New York, and Georgia from these other wells. So it's not just like right down the street. Like this stuff could actually blow in the wind and impact a whole nother state. That's crazy.
Yeah.
And the use of fresh water, I know that we said that they can, on average, they can use up to 9.7 million gallons of water per well. If you're in, the western states and, the whole water conservation that they have to go under, that could be pretty significant. I mean, you're talking about fracking a well or having drinking water for people to use to survive. These gas companies, at the rate that they're fracking wells, they've doubled their use of fresh water in the last 10 years. They used, just in Colorado, more than 10 billion gallons in 2022. So crazy.
That's just 2022.
Just 2022.
Wow.
Yeah. So pretty recent. And this one, I know that the other quote said average between 1.5 million and 9.7 million. This one says 2.7 million to 10.9 million. So either way, we're talking millions and millions of gallons of water per well, which is a dangerous trend in times of increasing and severe droughts, like we saw for several years over there. Let's see. Impact to the drinking water. Water withdrawals for hydraulic fracturing in times or areas of low water availability. Obviously, that's a problem. They limit the water that's available for the people. The spills that handle, because spills happen all the time, and they have to be able to contain that stuff and handle it responsibly. The injection of the fluids into the wells with inadequate mechanical integrity. Basically, they put these metal pipes down in there to be able to handle the pressure of what they're trying to pump up the ground with. And sometimes these things break. So the pressure doesn't go where you think the pressure is going to go, and you end up blowing out in an aquifer.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, because remember the drinking water aquifers, the water tables are usually way above, and they're on the way down.
Right.
So if your pipe has a blowout when it's surrounding drinking water, now you've put all this funky, nasty, the chemicals you're trying to inject into the ground mixed with the blowback, the flow back. Sorry. So yeah, there's always that possibility. And this was all EPA stuff that you can look up all the details on your own. But occasionally they accidentally inject the hydraulic fracturing fluids directly into groundwater resources. Oops. Yeah. Oops, we've just put all this stuff right in your aquifer directly.
No.
I know. It's terrifying. I don't like being the Debbie Downer.
You gotta be sometimes, though.
Gotta be.
Yeah.
I wanted people to be aware of this, and I wasn't even. I didn't pay much attention to fracking because I was like, it's a gas and oil thing. But we do it with water wells. We don't, not us. Us here with this company. But literally, that's a very common thing around here, and I don't really know what they inject down in there. It's a mixture of stuff, and it's not good. It's stuff that you don't want inside your body if you can at all avoid it.
Right.
Yeah, that's bad. Some of the chemicals that are in that the fracking formula, methanol, ethylene glycol, and I've never even heard of this one, propargyl alcohol, and they are considered hazardous to human health. So ethylene glycol, that's antifreeze.
It is, isn't it?
Yeah.
Wow.
And apparently it tastes like Gatorade, so that's what a lot of really naughty ladies use to get rid of their husbands. And it causes your kidneys to crystallize, if I remember right. And you have a very horrific death.
Wow.
So, ethylene glycol is not something you want to ingest on purpose.
Absolutely not.
And if you have the old green Gatorade that your wife keeps giving you, and you feel worse and worse, stop drinking it. Just get pure water and get to the hospital immediately. So, man. And then, of course, we mentioned PFAS.
Yeah. Our old friend PFAS.
Old friend PFAS. It's kind of a crazy thing because there's a lot of these ingredients that apparently they don't have to divulge to anybody about what they're using. They're calling them industry, what they call it? Industry, damn, what was it? I had the word. Like a trade secret. That's what it is. So they don't release it because they don't want somebody else to use the same funky stuff. But PFAS apparently is in a significant amount of these things. Now that they're really starting to dig in and find out what's in those things. Okay, so there's some good news. I always wanted to leave you with good news.
Beautiful.
I know, everybody's like, oh my gosh, we're all going to die tomorrow. But the Frack Pack may save you. Frack Pack.
What is that verse? Very fun to say.
Yeah.
Second.
It is fun to say, yeah. There's 5 bills that were recently introduced in Congress, and they all are around fracking. And these 5 bills are collectively known as the Frack Pack, and they're being sponsored from members of Congress around the country. So you can, of course, look all that stuff up. It's all public knowledge. But here's some of the highlights. The Frack Pack consists of FRAC, which is Fracturing Responsibility and Awareness of Chemicals Act. Basically, that one says that, I'll just read kind of the whole thing here because it makes more sense. Industries that inject toxic pollution through or near drinking water aquifers must comply with the Safe Drinking Water Act, except for the oil and gas industry. For some reason, they're exempt. So they're going to try to close that loophole. So I found that interesting that they would be exempt, but then I really wasn't that surprised because it's all about the money.
Yeah, absolutely.
They don't want to have to follow the rules. And then another part of the Frack Pack is BREATHE. They love their acronyms. Bringing reductions to energy's airborne toxic health effects. So it's kind of like basically it says individual sources of air pollution in the same area may be aggregated together so as to be regulated as a major source to protect public health, unless those sources are related to oil and gas development. So another loophole that they are working to close up in the interest of public safety, which is a good thing. So our gas may go even higher in cost, but we may live longer. It's a good trade.
Yeah. Then
we have FRESHER, focused reduction of effluents and stormwater runoff through Hydrofracking Environmental Regulation Act, FRESHER. Geez, how'd they come up with that? Basically, the runoff, it's trying to control the runoff because it says important provisions designed to control stormwater runoff that carries pollutants that can contaminate our water unless the runoff comes from an oil and gas development facility. How did they even put that in there without anybody calling them out on it? But anyway, they're trying to close that. And there's a shared act. Safe hydration is an American right in the Energy Development Act. This bill would require oil and gas operators to do baseline water testing before they begin operations so that effective communities can more easily determine if water pollution originates from that development. Well, that makes sense to me. You test first, then you do what you're going to do, and then you test again. And if you messed it up and it shows up, then you're the one that messed it up. Did I say that too quick?
No, that makes very perfect sense to me.
Because apparently they don't have to do any baseline tests. So they just go, oh no, it was always in there. This puts some accountability in there.
Yeah.
Wow. So
that was a lot of information.
That was a lot. Yeah, I was excited about this one just because there's a lot of stuff I didn't know, and now I'm scared, but it's one of those things we all, as we have sat here, probably 1,000 cars have driven right by the window, and I just keep thinking every one of those things uses gas.
Yeah.
So they don't care.
Of course not.
So everybody gets to listen and make your own decisions. I'm not here to judge. I'm just here to educate and entertain.
Share the facts.
On this Water Guy Unfiltered hour.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. How are we looking time-wise? Did I blow it?
We're hitting about 57 minutes.
Oh, my gosh. Right on time.
Yeah. Look at you.
My story about the tree was just the right length. And it was true. Yeah.
Only tell true stories here, right?
Yeah.
Only true.
I don't. It's too hard to tell fake stories because then you got to remember your fake stories.
Right.
I'm not good. I don't do lies because how did Judge Judy put it? You don't have to have a good memory to tell the truth. Right. Something like that.
Yeah.
Judy, love you. Correct me if I misquoted you there, but the intent was honorable.
Yeah.
All right, folks, we're going to come back, and we do have some really cool ones on the board for the next few episodes. So
Perfect.
Come back, check us out, and if you haven't already, subscribe, share us with your friends, and it's kind of cool. See you next time.
See you.